recording in a series of shiurim in the Sefer Daat Elokim as a hakdama to Chachmas Emes. We left off yesterday on page Chaf Dalet, which was in the middle of the section that he has on Fe'ak. Basically, we had explained how Adam Kadmon is going to be the highest of all the Olamais within the Malcham Panai, and it's going to be a way to diffuse the or of the Kav, which is coming in order that all the Olamais should be able to have a kiyum, because there's going to be different madregas in the Olamais, and they're all going to be misasif off of Adam Kadmon, because we explained that Adam Kadmon being the Keser Klali of all the Olamais, and Keser being the China of Ratzain, so it's the Ratzain for all the Olamais. So all of the Olamais will be pratistik or Ratzainim of the Ratzain Klali of Adam Kadmon. Now, yesterday we explained that when we talk in Chachmas Emes, since we're talking in things that don't have an Emes Tfisa, as opposed to Niglas Attire, mostly because we say that Niglas Attire is Tyrus Abriya, which is something that has a kalim and the wherewithal by which to talk about. Mashiach in Chachmas Emes, we're dealing in abstract concepts, so therefore we have to be able to talk. Therefore we use two mashal and two mitzayir. One is Dvar Mel Yonim. One is Tzir Adam. Another one is Tzir Oisius. So in terms of Tzir Adam, that's what Adam Kadmon is, and that's going to be the Iris that are Yotzim Adam Kadmon, because we're going to talk about the Iris that are Yotzim Min Nayim, or Min Aznaim, and Min Achaitim, Min Peh, Min Metzach, Min Atibur, Min Yisoid, Min Ragalayim, and all of these Achim. So we have to understand that these are just mashalim to explain the Iris that are taking place upstairs. Not that there are not Iris that are there, because if either there are Iris there, but I'm saying we have to talk in such ways in order to just be able to have a tefisa at all to it. The second way of understanding that is in terms of tzuras oisius, and these are the different shemas of a Kaddosh Baruch Hu and the different kinuyim. Each shem representing a different type of shefa that's coming and a different oilam. So the shemas could be the shemas themselves, we explained yesterday, or they could be what are called miluyim of the shemas, which are the expansion of the name, because it's the way the name is spelled out. There are also other variations in names, which the Mechaber here is not discussing. Like there's something called the Acharayim. The Acharayim is where you have like a triangulation of the name. Like the Acharayim of the Shem Havaya would be Yud, Yud K Vav, Yud K Vav K. Right, I'll give you an example to this, because yesterday we spoke about the Shem Ab. So which is Yud K Vav K spelled out by Mili Yudin. So the triangulation of that, meaning the Acharayim of the Shem Yud, which would be Yud Vav Dalet, and then Yud Vav Dalet K Yud, and then Yud Vav Dalet K Yud Vav, and then Yud Vav Dalet K Yud Vav K Yud, is Gematria Kapad, 184. So the Rizal explains that was the Shem by which HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Megala Klal Yisrael from Mitzrayim, that was the koyach that was used. So in other words, because that particular name represents a special koyach. Why punk that name, Lamaisa? Right, we don't have to go into right now. But I'm saying, that's an example of this. So I'm saying, so you could have an Acharayim in a Milui, or you could have a Mili, right, of the Shem, and different variations thereof. So yesterday we explained that there are four basic Miluyim. They are what we call the Ab, Sag, Ma, Ben. Remember, they're all Nichla within the Pashut. It's because the Pashut is the Bechina of Keser, the Mili is the Bechina of Chachma. Because remember, Keser is Ratzon, Chacham is Yesh. Yesh is always Nechal in the ayin that precedes it, because the idea always has to be preceded by the idea, by the Ratzon for that idea. And the Rav says the Mili de Mili Lamashal, like if you would spell out the Mili already, that would be Bechinas Bina, because that's a further expansion. Because remember, that's the taking the idea and making it into a plan. And then if we further expanded it, we would be going more and more. Every expansion is more of a Gili. The way it generally works is that the more Pasha Hashem is, the higher it is, because it's Nichal, everything that comes after it. It's kind of like, again, Mishnayos as opposed to Gemara, where the Mishnayos will contain within it everything that's said in the Gemara. But of course, but the Gemara is the fleshing out of the Mishnayos. So we explained yesterday four basic shemas. They are the shemas of Ab, Sak, Ma, Ben, and we're going to be using them all the time. So that from Mamela you have to get used to this, and you have to be regular with these Lashonis, and they should be mamish rolling off your tongue. The Shem Ab is Havaya Mili Yud, and it's spelled Yud Vav Dalet K Yud, Vav Yud Vav, and then K Yud. Basically, the K Vav and the K Achrein are all spelled with Yudin, because the Yud is always spelled the same way, Yud Vav Dalet. And what this represents the Bechina of Chachma, usually. Because Chachma is a Yud, it's a Goylem, it's an idea, it hasn't been fleshed out yet. Then we have a Shem called Sag, which is Gematria 63, which again, it's just like the Milia, just like Ab, except the only Nachmina is, instead of Vav Yud Vav, it's spelled Vav Aleph Vav, because the Aleph is the Milia of Ma. and this is going to be the Bechinas Bina, because this is going to be the Bechina of Eke or Bina, which allows the Gili to take place. It's Ames Damen Les Gayus, I will be Megala, but not yet. So therefore you have the Hatzchala of the Bechina of Zer Ampim or Tiferes or Ma. They're all Kinuyim Zelazeh, which we'll see Bezos Hashem Yisbarach. Why punct in the Vav we don't have to go into right now. Why? That's where the remes to the Shem Ma is, but that's where it is. The Shem Ma is Gematria Adam. That's Milei Alpin, meaning that all the Hey Vav and the Hey Achrein are all spelled with olives. You know, Yud Vav Dalet K Aleph, Vav Aleph Vav, and then K Aleph. This is Gematria Adam. This represents the Bechinas Ruach. This represents the Nafesh Lakus, if you will, that has to be played on Nafesh Bahamas. And the Nefesh Bahamas, or the Bechinas Malchus, or the Nefesh, the lowest level of the Naran Chai, that's going to be the Bechinas Ben, which is basically a Havaya Kafel, because Yud Vav Dalet, the Vav and the Dalet is Gematria Yud, which is Kafel of the Yud, and then Hey Hey Vav Vav, and then Hey Hey again. Because this represents Malchus. Because Malchus is in essence a sum total of everything that came before it. So it's basically like a mirror, and it just basically it's everything that's there but put together. Now, we ended off on Daf Chaf Dalet, and we ended off at the end of the first paragraph. And the last line of the first paragraph we read, but we didn't explain, so we're going to do that now. He says that Dalet Havayis Elu, this is 4 lines from the top on Daf Chaf Dalet. Dalet Havayis Elahim Keneged Dalet Bechinas. These 4 Havayis are connected 4 different Bechinas, which are Taimim, Nekudos, Tagin, and Isis. Of course, Taimim being the trop, like when you're laying a Sefer Torah or you're laying a Nevi'im or Ksuvim. The Nekudos, of course, being Tachas Ha'Ois, sometimes in the middle of the Ois, like a Shurak, and sometimes on top of the Ois, but typically on the bottom of the Ois. And then the Tagin, which, of course, are the Gimel Tagim of the Shatnez Gates and the 1 Tag of the Beit Chaya, and then the Oisis themselves. These represent also a coming from Chachma to Bina, and then from Bina to Zad, and then from Zad to Nuk, which again we said is basically a Yud K Vav K, because it's an inyan of coming from element to Gilui. Going from Chachma, which is the idea, moving into Bina, which is the planning stage, moving into Zer Ampim or Tiferes, sometimes it's called, or the Vak, sometimes it's called, because it concludes all the Vav spheres from Chesed Gvur Tiferes and Etz Chayim Yesod. That's the doing stage, and then Malchus, which is the Tachlis or fruition stage. That's the same thing over here. Taimim is something which is Yerithro. It's something which is Lamashal. It's an inflection in the way the word is spoken. Like Lamashal, this person will say yes, yes, yes. Now I said yes just 3 different ways, but they all had different meanings based on the trop and based on the inflection of the voice. The Nekudah surely are the Taimim. They represent, according to the Rav, they represent the Neshama of the Ois. The Nekudos represent the Ruach, because that's what gives life to it. Because letters without Nekudos cannot be spoken. Because even to say Aleph, you would have to have Nekudos underneath the Aleph in order to say it. Because without it, it wouldn't sound anything. So basically, Oisios, which are the Kli itself, which makes sense that the Oisios should be the Kli, because that's where the Etzem Or, the repository for the Or, will be. The Nekudos will give life to that, and that will be the Ruach. But higher than that will be the Taimim. Tagin represent well, the truth is, Tagin represent the bechinas of Ruach, or bechinas of Neshama, which are inside the Ois itself, to animate the Ois, mitzad itself, at the lowest level. Kind of like a Chevel de Garmi, which is left after a person's Petira. There's a bechina of his nefesh which stays behind. We're familiar with. This resides in the loose bone. We know that we eat malava malka, and that's mazin this bone. And that's what the Tagin represent. And the Oisios, they represent the Kalim themselves. The reason why so basically you have a Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama system, an Aran system, plus you have the Oisios, which are the Kalim. The reason why we shtel on this is because, remember, we can describe the Dvarim Yonim in terms of Tzuras Oisios. And we know that Dvar Hashem, Shemaim Naaseh, that the word of Hashem, Kaviochel, the Shemaims were created. So, and in the beginning of Sefer Yetzirah, in the first Mishnah, the first parak, right? The Mechaber says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Olam b'Sefer, b'Sipur, that with a book, and b'Sipur, and with speech. So the Ian of the 2 books, at least according to the Gra, is the Bechina of Chachma and Bina, and the Ian of speech is the Bechina of Das. which we don't have to go into right now. But Sof Kol Sof, there's an inyan of written and the inyan of writing. Those are the two books. And then there's an inyan of speech. Derech Agav, I'll just tell you because we started it. The first book is a Sefer which is Chosam. It's the book which is closed because you have a book up on your Svarim strength. You don't look at it. Maisa, all the wisdom is there, but the Maisa it hasn't been piled at all yet. That's the B'chin of Chachma. It's there, but it's still B'chin of Goylem. The second Sefer is now when you read the Sefer and the Sefer becomes your Rebbe. That's B'chin of Bina because now you're becoming a Makabel, right, from the Sefer. B'chin of Das is the B'chin where you're relating to a person because when you speak to a person, it's happening b'basaches. So KADOSH Baruch Hu created the world in terms of these Oisias, because remember all these Oisias and all of these Shemas, they're all Moira on a specific Ora Prati, and a Mela. So therefore we have to analyze these Oisias and we have to break them up. So breaking the Oisias up into the various components, including speech, which is one of the ingredients by which the Ma'aser Bereishis was created, would be these time in the Nekudas Tag and Oisias. This Derech Agav was the inyan of Adam Rishon. We know that when he was Kar Shemus, because what he did was he was able to discern based on the different Shemus what their Shorish Neshama was of all the animals. Like Moshe, when he said Aryeh, Aleph, Reish, Yod, Hey was a lion, what he did was he was able to discern that the Aleph has a specific Koyach, the Reish has a specific Koyach, the Yod and the Hey has specific Koyach, and when they're all put together in that particular Tziruf, that makes what we know of as Aryeh. Right, even though upstairs the Aleph, ratio and Hey don't exist like they do down here, but they do parallel certain koyches, Habriya and Mamela, and when they come down here, the way they manifest themselves is a bechina of a lion, because the Rav explains that every olam from olam to olam is a bechina of chaysim v'neachtam, or like l'mashal. Well, what that really means is like a signet ring that's put into, let's say, wax and then going again, kind of like a copy. It's like, imagine if, let's say, you had an original and you made a copy of it. Imagine old copy machines from 20 years ago, so it was a little smudgy, not like today's copy machines, which are very good. And so therefore, then the next copy is a little smudgier than that, and the next one is a little smudgier than that. So each one is more coarse than the one before. So Kaviocha, the Olamites are like that also. Whatever's going to be in one oilam is going to be in the oilam above it, but it's going to be more zach than the oilam below. And then Kifi, and then the oilam above that is now going to be more zach than Kifi, the oilam below that. And v'chula v'chula. Okay, so we have to get used to these l'shonos. Weiter. All of that is in klolius, meaning these four bechinas of absak ma'ben and the bechinas of timim, nekudas, tag, and noisius. Avol kesheneret aray lepratim. When we go into pratim, hashakol echad me'adal havaya now kol metanta. Each one of those havayas is kol from its own tanta. So, meaning that in fact, let's finish the paragraph first. So therefore, even though Ab itself corresponds to Taimim, just like Sag would correspond to Nekudos, and Ma would correspond to Tagen, and Ben would correspond to Oisius, but still within it there will also be a Bechina of Taimim Nekudin, of Nekudos, Tagen, and Oisius. Let me explain to what he said, because it's a little bit difficult from the way he was mekatzer here. There's a principle of unity which is manifest in all of Ma'aser Bereishis. What that is that because you see the Rav explains, and it's one of the Iker Klolim in the Rav and in the Kabbalah of the Arizal, and the way the Rishash understands the Arizal. You see this manifest many times. This inyan of Klal v'Prat La'olam Shavim. The Rav says it two places, at least two that I know of. One in Shar Lamed, Perek Vav, at the end at the end of Perek Vav in Etz Chayim, and also he says it in Mavai Sharim, and I forgot where exactly, and he says it a third place in Shar Gimel, Perek Aleph at the beginning. The reason why this is so critically important is to realize that this inyan of Eser Spheres, which we've explained, makes up what's called the parts of, or a whole, and the Eser Spheres, which parallel Havaya. This is in everything. Everything will have this. In other words, whether we're looking at, let's say, a map, if you will, or let's say we'd be looking at a spiritual diagram of all the Olamais, everything, Kaviyachol, right, all the way down from the Ein Sof Kaviyachol and the Or Ein Sof, the Makam Panei, and everything within the Makam Panei. It would look one way. It would look a certain way. Then, if we were going to isolate any prat within that, like let's say we would look at one oilam inside itself. Let's say we look at one oilam. So that one oilam will look exactly the same. You understand? And then if we were going to look within that oilam, right, and a certain prat within that item, it'll also look exactly the same.
And what does it look like?
The mashal the Kadmonim give on this is the rocks from Har Sinai. That Tal Sefer gives this mashal, explains that I've never seen this, but I hear this to be true, that if that when one splits open a rock from Har Sinai, there's like a miniature sneh there. And if one were to split that in half, there would now be, both of them would have a miniature sneh. And if one were to split that in half, there would also be a miniature sneh in both of them. I have a Rabbi that he calls this the hologrammatic principle, because he, I tried this once, but it didn't work, but he said it does. If you take a hologram, and if you were to, which is like a kind of a three-dimensional tzura on a two-dimensional plane, and if you were to go and cut it in half, you would get two three-dimensional tzuras. You wouldn't lose anything, because each prod would have everything that the klal would have. This is always true because the Esser spheres are the spiritual DNA of everything, and everything will have this. Now, the manifestation that the Esser spheres will take on will be different in every olam, and will be different in every object in every olam. That's true. But I'm saying, in terms of if we were going to isolate everything mitzad itself, it would look exactly the same. The reason why that is because what we've explained the other day in terms of hierarchy, in terms of klal and prat. Mashal, if the mashal, it depends on how we look at things. Everything mitzad itself is a klal, like the adam. Imagine an adam, and the adam mitzad himself is a klal. So the mashal, he would have within him Esser spheres. But the mashal, if we put him in terms of a family, he would only be a prat of that family. The mashal, let's say he's the father of children, and he's the son of parents. So now we're going to give him the status of a prat, because in terms of that family unit, he's a prat. Now, if we were going to look at that family unit as a klal, that one family unit, but in terms of, let's say, everybody living on that block, let's say, Lamashal, right, that's only a prod in everybody living on that block. But that block itself has an organization. And so that itself would be a klal. And then you could do this v'chula. You could say that the city is the klal, but that's only a prod in terms of, let's say, the entire world. And you can say the entire world is a klal, but that's only a prod in terms of, let's say, that this generation is only a prod in terms of Shisha Shnin and all the doiras that were. And you could look at the Shisha Shnin as one klal. But then again, that would also be a prod, Kifid Olam Haba, which is going to come later, and et cetera, et cetera. It keeps on going like this. So again, L'olam Prat B'Klal Shavim. So what animates the world? What is the basic theme? The basic shefa that's flowing is a Kaddosh Baruch Hu, we know, and the basic shefa of a Kaddosh Baruch Hu is Kavyochel L'Shem Havaya, because Havaya represents the now, right now, and therefore in all the various anafim of the Havaya, which are various anafim of the now. So therefore, you're always going to have a Havaya. In fact, Taloyers explains that Eis Havaya ve'Eis Havaya v'lo kol Havaya shavim. There's a line in the Zohar he says like that there's Havaya and there's Havaya, but not all Havayas are the same. Now, the Chayr, when you read that line like that, it sounds a shtickle like Kfir, Chas v'Shalom. But what he's trying to say is that this system that we're giving here, that we're outlining, is applicable everywhere. And it's applicable at any level, whether we're dealing in the macro level or we're dealing in the micro level. So, ergo like this. Let's say we're looking at it, back to what the Daat Elokim is saying. Let's say we're looking at an ab, right? We'll say Havaya is an expansion, it's a bechinas ab. But within that ab, there will be a miniature ab Sagma Ben itself. In other words, if we took a regular Havaya, we'd say the Yud parallels the Ab, the K Rishona parallels the Sag, the Vav parallels the Ma, and the K Achrona parallels the Ben. So that would be an Ab Sag Ma Ben. Now, let's say we were going to isolate one of those letters. Let's say the Yud, which is the Ab. Now, within that, there will be a miniature Havaya there too. So therefore, there will be a miniature Yud K Vav K there. So therefore, there will be a miniature Ab Sag Ma Ben over there also.
Within that prod.
In that prat, yes. So because now we're not looking at it as a prat anymore, we're looking at it as a klal, because we're isolating it mitzad itself.
Right.
So therefore, it's not the status of a yud; it's now the status of an absak ma ben. But nomenclature-wise, in order to know what we're just talking about, we're going to call it an ab de ab. That's an ab of the ab, or a sag de ab, or a ma de ab, or a ben de ab. Okay, the same thing with the sag now. Mashal, the Hey Rishayim. So the Sag mitzad itself, right, is only a prod in that original Havaya. But if we look at it, in connection with the other oisius of that Havaya, it's only a prod. But if we were to look at it mitzad itself, it's a klal. So Mamela, you could isolate an Ab Sag Ma Ben there also. So you could have an Ab de Sag, you could have a Sag de Sag, you could have a Ma or Ben de Sag. Now the truth is this keeps on going on infinitum, because you see in the Ab de Sag Lamashal, well, that Ab Sag Ma Ben of Sag are only pratim in the Sag. But if you wanted to, you could isolate the ab itself. So you would have an ab sag ma ben in the ab of sag. So you would have an ab da ab da sag, a sag da ab da sag, a ma da ab da sag, and a ben da ab da sag, and v'chula v'chula. This sounds rather tedious, but the emphasis you should know, as weird as this sounds, half of the kavanas of the tefillas are going to be negated this. The reason why that is because one of the basic inyanim of the kavanas, at least in learning the kavanas, is to know where you're holding at any particular time in the tefillah. You understand? We want to know what exactly you're doing, punct, right now. So the way we know that is to know where you're holding. And the only way to do that is to have a map in front of you to know what's going on now. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to, instead of saying Abzag Ma Ben, we're going to divide up into Naran Chai, which is the same thing. And we'll say that within every Naran Chai, let's see, within the Nefesh, there'll be a Naran Chai of Nefesh. So there'll be a Nefesh of Nefesh, there'll be a Ruach of Nefesh, there'll be a Neshama of Nefesh, Chai Yechid of Nefesh. Same thing in Ruach. There'll be a Naran Chai of Ruach. There'll be a Naran Chai of Neshama. There'll be a Naran Chai of Chai. There'll be a Naran Chai of Yechida. And we can subdivide those also yet. L'mashal, just even though now it's not our sugya, just you should know that all the shefa that comes during the week comes from the nefesh of neshama, and it doesn't even come from the entire nefesh of neshama. It only comes from the nefesh and ruach of nefesh of neshama. Nefesh ruach neshama of nefesh of neshama. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm wrong on that. But anyways, we're getting really off topic and we're going really farther than we should right now. But I'm just saying this is something which is going to be very important. And the general rule and the general call is because of the ilam klal b'prat shavim. So let's just try to finish now the paragraph. He says, so we're going to leave ak because we can't speak about it itself. And we're going to talk about the anafim and mitzvahs outside of it. Because we're going to call those anafim because there are various koiches that are coming. Like we're going to explain that Kaviochel, in terms of a marshal, B'tzuras Adam, we're going to say that these different koichais and these different alamais, which are represented by this Tzuras Isius and by these Shemas, are coming out of Ak. But we're not going to deal with the Pinimis of Ak. We're only going to be dealing with the Anafim that are Yotzi Me'ak. The Rav is very sparing in the Pinimis of Ak, and there's only one drush, or potentially two drushim in all of Etz Chayim, which do deal with the Pinimis of Ak. But in this Sefer, we're not going to deal with it at all. We're only going to deal with what comes out of Ak. Because to deal with Pinimis Ak, we'd have to deal with Pinimis Ratzon. And then you have to know what the Ratzon for the Ratzon was. Because the emissaries, the Sarim, do talk about Ratzon for Ratzon, and they call that Einig. Because remember, the Kav is Mislavish in back of Ak. So Mela, the Kav is higher. And the Kav is the Bechinas Einig. It's the Bechinas Simcha, because the Simcha, which is neither the Ratzon. But the truth is we're getting very high at that point. So therefore the Rav is very, very, it doesn't talk about that much. That everything that comes from Ak, we're going to see they come mitzad Yosher, not mitzad Igulim. Shchenas Dayim ve'inayim v'kiyoytze eini nimnoim ela b'chinas Yosher. Shelavada kamar adam b'ramach Avraham. What he means to say by that is that, remember, we learned before that there's two b'chinas, the b'chin of Yosher and the b'chinas of Igulim, and these b'chinas are going to share the Igulim of Ak, because all of these olamais, until we move into the next olam, are all going to be called olamas of Ak. Since there are lamas of Ak, they share the Igulim of Ak. When we're going to be moving into the next distinct Olam, which Mr. Shem will see is Olam Atzilas, or Olam Anakudis actually, which comes before Olam Atzilas, that will have its own distinct Igulim. Because definitionally, every Olam has to have Yosher and Igul. Because if it only had Yosher without Igul, it would be Or without a Kli. Because remember, Igul corresponds to the Kli of that Olam, whereas Yosher corresponds to the Or of that Olam. So when he means here, this is a quote from the Rav in Etz Chayim, in Shar Al Perak Dalet. He basically, the way the Leshem understands that is that Avada there are Igulim for these Iris. It just means that since there are Lamas of Ak, there are Lamas of Ratzon, they share the same Igul that Ak shares. But Avada, the lower Alamais will have their own Igulim. And when we get to the lower Alamais, we will deal with their Igulim also. Okay, we'll stop here.